Okay, so what we have when you're setting up your project is a list of options. So we can see these all here, which you may see a subset of depending on your setup. So essentially, we've got a pre-investment tariff consultancy. So effectively, if you just want to look at their tariff versus their grid import, and you want to get some analysis on where they're spending their money, how they're spending it, etc., you don't want to sort of access any intelligence on investing in solar or energy storage at this moment in time, then you choose pre-investment tariff consultancy. So it sort of strips out a lot of the inputs, just asks you for grid import and tariff and a few other things, and then you'll get your report on that. However, most people in most of the projects we look at will be looking at sort of behind the meter sort of microgrid investments. So where you have an investment with demand and you're looking to put some solar or wind and or storage behind that meter that industrial or domestic or commercial site is connected to. And that relates to behind the meter. And then we've got these other ones here in terms of generation supplied storage and in front of meter. So I'm just going to show you a couple of sort of diagrams to sort of help bring those to life. So let's just go to those. So here we see the behind the meter. So we can see the grid distribution system, we can see the client's connection to that distribution system, and then just as I was saying, we have the demand. It can be electrified heat and power and transport, and then what we're doing is we're looking to sort of potentially put generation. It's either existing or we're putting new generation into that system that can either flow to the demand, flow to some potential energy storage, or flow out of that connection back to the distribution system. And the same with the storage, either charging from solar or charging from the grid and then discharging back to the local demand. So we then move to the next one, which is the in front of meter with no demand. So this is essentially very simple. We're going to have generation, which could be solar or wind or something along those. It only has a single connection to the grid. And effectively what we're going to be modeling is the flow of energy from that generator through either to energy storage on site that will then be redistributed back at another time, or the direct export straight to the grid. So we call this in front of the meter with no demand. There is absolutely no demand there. There is another one which is in front of the meter with virtual demand. So here we have the same setup we saw on the last slide with our generation and storage directly connecting to the grid. And then over somewhere else connected to the grid, we have a demand. And effectively what we're doing is we're then putting a kind of virtual power purchase agreement between the two. So even though the electricity is not going directly into this local demand, we effectively, in half-hour chunks, calculate how much energy would be used by the demand, and then we create a kind of power purchase based on that, and whatever's not used by the demand in that process is then exported back out to the grid. We then finally have another one, which is generation supplied storage. I would recommend that you contact us if you're interested in this or interested in modeling this. It's a very specific thing, but effectively it's when we have the storage from an in front of meter site connected to another locally sited demand asset, but via a private wire. Now, with these, you can't just connect a private wire by closing this switch to here, because you then get parallel supply. So also over here on the right hand side, when this, just before this connects, you'd have a disconnection of this portion from the grid, and then it would connect here. But effectively it's more of a physical connection. Your battery is essentially acting as a kind of a sort of a storage facility between the two sites, and I'm really happy to take people through that if you're interested in that. Hopefully that's been of use, and thanks for listening.